Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansu, and welcome you guys to another episode of the DREAMERSPRO show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got a very, very interesting show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Well, as you guys know, towards this time last year, ESPN had some major layoffs. Some of the people were Jalen Rose, Max Kellerman, Mark Jackson, and of course, longtime contributor on ESPN who used to cover NBA games, former head coach, Jeff Van Gundy. Now, if you remember Jeff Van Gundy, he had some colorful commentary. He used to call out some of the dumbass things that would happen during NBA games and all of that. And apparently, after he got fired by ESPN, according to because they were downsizing, we then later heard that the NBA, in this particular Adam Silver's, wasn't a fan of the critical commentary from Jeff Van Gundy about the NBA. It was something that he wasn't happy about. Since then, we hadn't heard much about him until yesterday. And as a matter of fact, before we even get into what happened yesterday, we got some breaking news right now that we're getting from Adrian Wojnarowski, which is Jeff Van Gundy, ESPN sources Jeff Van Gundy, who spent the season as a senior consultant for the NBA championship Boston Celtics, has agreed on a deal to become the lead assistant on Ty Lue's Los Angeles coaching staff. And then he also added, Van Gundy, considered one of the finest minds in basketball and had been pursued for years to rejoin coaching in a full-time basis. He led the Knicks and Rockets to 430 regular season games and 44 playoff wins in over 11 seasons. So Jeff Van Gundy is going to be back coaching, at least from a lead assistant role, with the Los Angeles Clippers. So shout out to Jeff Van Gundy. Congratulations to him. But yesterday, Jeff Van Gundy did a sit down with Mason Cameron's show called Come and Talk to Me. And he was speaking to Mark Jackson, his former partner on television. And essentially what he was doing was he was basically, revealing what it was like to be fired at ESPN and really finding his way back into the NBA through Brad Stevens from the Boston Celtics extending an olive branch. And he was basically explaining what that entire process was like to Mark Jackson. So what we want to do now is we want to play exactly what Jeff Van Gundy had to say to Mark Jackson on him being fired from ESPN and what it was like, after that. And then want to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
But I would like to know, seeing you and my father, Mike Breen, just the whole team, for years I watched you guys and everybody loved what you guys had, which is such a special thing.
Not everybody.
Well, most of us.
Yeah. Okay.
But Coach, I want to know, what was it like just emotionally closing that door and moving into your next segment of life?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I got fired on June 30th. And then my youngest, Grayson, went to school in August. So we became empty nesters. Then my sister-in-law tragically passed away in the middle of August as well. And my best friend in Houston contracted cancer and subsequently died this spring. And
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. And so for me, when I went to work for the Celtics after the World Cup last fall, I only knew Brad Stevens a little bit. And I was really in an awkward place in life, not really knowing, where I was going or what my purpose was or how I was going to be with this new group of people where I didn't know anyone. And quite frankly, it's been one of the most rejuvenating things I've ever gone through. Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla threw me a lifeline, and everybody on that coaching staff has welcomed me with open arms. It's a very young coaching staff. Sam Cassell is, I think, the oldest, there's no one else other than Sam that's over 40 years old. I have learned
Wow.
so much. I have been embraced and welcomed in, and the whole organization, from ownership to Brad staff to the coaching staff, um, has just been remarkable. And I think
So you heard what Jeff Van Gundy had to say there. What are my thoughts about that? Well, you know, Jeff Van Gundy being fired from ESPN was a shocker to a lot of us, because I really enjoyed the job that he did with Mark Jackson covering NBA games, especially NBA Finals. I thought they were great, right? I thought they were really, really good. So to see ESPN get rid of Jeff Van Gundy was really, really, surprising to me. But, I guess it's part of the business. They let go of some other big names, as I mentioned before, Max Kellerman, Marcellus Wiley, who's a friend to the show. We have asked him on a couple occasions, what's that situation been like for Max Kellerman? And he basically said Max Kellerman is just sitting back collecting checks while he plots his next move. And he expects, Max Kellerman to come back into the sports media space fairly soon. So we have that out there. But in the case of Jeff Van Gundy, if you listen to the things that he went through, it must have been a very, very difficult period for him, right? And for him to somehow still find a way to maintain his sense of humor and then find himself back in a assistant coach or lead assistant coaching a position with a very good organization in terms of the way that they ran, and going to be now part of the new Intuit Arena, working there. I think that's very good news for him, right? I think that's very good news for him. If you remember anything from Jeff Van Gundy's coaching days, I really started following him when he was coaching the Houston Rockets back when Steve Francis used to be my favorite player. Jeff Van Gundy was one of those coaches that was really hard on his players, and he was a defensive-minded head coach. I mean, that's exactly what he is. He was a defensive-minded. He wanted his teams to play great defense. He was one of these guys, just like his brother Stan Van Gundy, who, he just didn't like players making mental mistakes and having mental breakdowns. That was something that just really bothered him. So to see Ty Lue add him to the Clippers coaching staff, I think is a very good thing. And Lord knows the Clippers need to bolster their defense. So to add someone like this, a defensive mind like this, and someone who's also been a head coach, you just basically bolstered your coaching staff by adding essentially another head coach to your roster, right? So I think that's a good thing for him. I am very happy for him that he's found a way to bounce back, and now he's found his way back into the NBA, where I think he's most comfortable. But I just thought that, to see him go through what he went through during that period after he got fired from ESPN and all of those tragic moments that he endured, to see him kind of bounce back on his feet and come back stronger than ever, I think is a really good thing and admirable on his part. So these are my thoughts on what Jeff Van Gundy had to say. What I want to know from the audience is, number one, what do you think about what he had to say to Mark Jackson? Number two, do you think it was right for ESPN to let go of Jeff Van Gundy? And number three, how do you think he's going to perform in his new role with Ty Lue on the Los Angeles Clippers? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.